Hello, I'm Jacqueline Terrebonne, the editor-in-chief of Galerie magazine, and I'm thrilled to be joined today by Jennifer Ash Rudick. She's Galerie's editor-at-large, and she's also the author of a new book out this summer called Summer to Summer. It's the freshest, most beautiful look at seaside living and just captures all the places that we want to be right now. But this should come as no surprise that Jennifer has another gorgeous book out. Palm Beach Chic is one of her other books, as well as Out East and City of Angels. They're all gorgeous books that look at unique houses, and Summer to Summer does the exact same. Thank you, Jennifer, so much for joining me here today.
Oh, thank you for that wonderful introduction.
Well, it is all very true. And this book, I just can't get enough of it because looking at it page after page is, you know, they're fresh and easy homes and places that remind you of family and happy days. So it's really refreshing.
It's a nice escape right now, you know, when a lot of us are, you know, we can't travel. And it's nice to have a little window into summer houses in other places. But it's really been a joy to do. And I love meeting the families, going from Maine to Nantucket to Martha's Vineyard, Fisher's Island, Block Island, you name it. We took trains, planes, and automobiles, often on the same day, often in the same, you know, morning. Right. And, you know, we crammed it all in, and I did it with the photographer's Tria Giovan, and we really hustle, but we had a great time doing it. I hope that's reflected in the book.
It absolutely is. It absolutely is. It makes you smile. And one of the houses that I just love so much in the book is one that we featured in the summer issue of Galerie, and that's a house in Maine. Can you tell me about that house and what makes it so spectacular and special?
Well, this house there's nothing like it. And in fact, when someone told me about it, she said, you know, you won't find many Noguchi houses on the coast of Maine, you know, which was of course an understatement, because you won't find many Noguchi houses, and certainly not on the coast of Maine. And when you're looking for summer houses, that's like, you know, that's Mecca. So it's just beautiful. It was built by the Burden family. So William Burden was the president of the board of the Museum of Modern Art in the 1940s. So the Museum of Modern Art, as you can imagine, looks even contemporary and ahead of its time now. So you can imagine in 1940 what a forward thinker he was. And so he knew Wallace Harrison, the architect, the primary architect on Rockefeller Center and the United Nations and Lincoln Center. And he bought a piece of property in Northeast Harbor, Maine. And he didn't want the classic kind of shingle summer house. He really wanted something that would blend into the landscape, and people were just starting to think that way. So, so he called upon Harrison, who he knew from all these public works in the city. And Harrison had worked a lot with Noguchi, and of course, Isamu Noguchi, of course, he of the paper lanterns. And so and of course, Burden knew Noguchi as well, because he was the president of the board of the Museum of Modern Art. So this was an incredible collaboration between the three men. And they really, what they were looking for was a way to communicate, and everything they built and did was a shared vision for a future of opportunity, individual freedom, and open disclosure. So they wanted this house to
That's a very summer house.
Those are big ideas, right? But that is how they thought. And if you and they wanted this house to take a very light footprint on its setting, you know. And so when you walk into the house, it just does it's airy, it's one room deep, it sucks you right into, you know, you see the bay as soon as you open the front door. It's low lying, it's birch, it blends in with the surroundings. It really is tucked into its beautiful surroundings, and it's on kind of the cliff of the coast and the rocky coast. All of Maine has these rocky coasts. They don't really have beaches, they have coves. And it could not be more beautiful. Now, The family loved it. They lived there for many years. When Mr. Burden died, he gave the house to his son Ordway Burden and his wife Jean, and Jean had been an architecture student. So this was such a jewel to her. She loved it. It really got under her skin. But within a few years of owning it, they rented it out one month, and it burnt to the ground, which was, to say the least. They couldn't even imagine how they could rebuild this house. They had some plans, but they had nobody had really ever documented much about this house, except Jean remembered one day, just for one day, she had allowed an architecture student in, and the architecture student had her husband along taking the pictures for her. And he happened to be an architect. So she called them. They had all of the pictures. They had taken copious notes, and she hired him to rebuild the house, like inch by inch. And I mean, they had master woodworkers. They tracked down, I have it here, the textured plywood that was also used in Radio City Music Hall, and bought it online. They found Pecky cypress from Florida and brought it up. They had to buy it all vintage. And they, of course, recreated the table. So they had a master woodworker create this Noguchi table that looks like a whale's tail. And the original table remains in their garage, and it looks like a carcass, honestly. It's like half burnt, but it was kind of split in two. So the master woodworker could really study it and rebuild this beautiful new table. And people who have been to the house before and after say they cannot tell the difference. And now it's on the Register of Historic Houses. So it's a happy ending.
Absolutely spectacular. It is not a house of rectangles and boxes. It's undulating, it's sculptural. It really fits in so beautifully there. So I'm excited that it's in the summer issue, and everyone needs to check out both your book and the summer issue to get
it looks so beautiful in Gallery, and I have to say it was in such good company. It was really an honor to have it there, because it really is, the French have a term, this enjeu, meaning in its element, in its own juice. And I feel like putting this house in Gallery magazine, because it's a blend of art and shelter, what could be more perfect?
Oh, perfect. Well, it's in a great mix in your book too, and there's so many other interesting houses there. And one that I particularly love is designer Ken Folks in Provincetown. What a great house to feature. It's really about the spirit of a person and of a place so much. What was it like to shoot and write that story with Ken?
Well, Ken, we're all in love with Ken, of course, that. And of course, was able to write about Ken's St. Joseph Art Society for Gallery magazine. He doesn't do anything small, and he doesn't do anything in a normal way. He's always unexpected. This is probably the most normal thing he's ever done, actually. However, when you know the story, he rescued, this house was an old house on the bay in Provincetown, and he'd come to love Provincetown. He was spending summers there. I think he and his boyfriend, Kurt Wooten, had one of their first romantic weekends away in Provincetown when they lived in Boston. They met in Boston in a laundromat. They thought one another had stolen one another's towels, because they both had the same green Ralph Lauren towels. So they knew it was love. And so they bought this house, and it was kind of on, it was being held up so that the water wouldn't come in. I mean, this house was about to float away, and it was in very, very bad shape. So Ken decided to restore it, and he restored it, but he didn't want to lose any of the patina or the feeling of it. And I think the pictures show that he really did an incredible job. It's hard to walk into that house and think that it has wireless, and I can't say it has central air. I'm not sure about that. He did try and keep it simple, but it doesn't. It's all restored to perfection. And he of course shopped in thrift stores and to find all the old furniture. The person who lived in the house before was a hoarder, so he kept some of the furniture from the gentleman who used to live there. And it's just magical, you know. And when you walk through Provincetown with Ken Folk, it is like literally walking. It's magical. It's like Brigadoon, you know. He like practically skips down the street and everybody is, you know, like, hi Ken, hi Ken, hi Ken. And he'll say, you know, oh, there's so and so. And I mean, Provincetown has a rich, I think it's the oldest ongoing artist colony in the country. So that's where Eugene O'Neill, Robert Mapplethorpe lived there. Helen Frankenthaler worked there. Of course, Eugene O'Neill, Hans Hofmann. And, you know, it's just, it has such a rich history, and Ken fits right in. He's in the fabric of the place now.
And celebrating it and making sure that people know that about the space. I stayed there with him once and had such a wonderful time, but also he educated me on the island, and I stayed in that gorgeous marigold guest room that was water. But he gave me a book, you know, a little stack of bedside reading of books about Provincetown, the artists there, the history of the place. And I thought that was so kind and such a beautiful gesture to leave for your house guest.
He is one of the most thoughtful people you'll ever meet. He never, and you know, when you're with him, you understand everything he has going on in his business life, right? When you're with him, it's as if he has not a care in the world. He focuses on no one but you, and he has all the time in the world. But we all know he's he has so many projects going on. He's designed half of San Francisco. So
I have a doppelganger. I have no idea how it's all done.
How he does it.
But another house that I love in the book is Another Designers, and I feel like he has a different spirit and energy, but is so smart and such a student of design and cool. And that's David Netto, and that house is fantastic.
David Netto has encyclopedic knowledge of design, of everything, and uses it to his advantage. You know, he can really, he spins straw into gold, and he did in this house. He because when he bought this house, it was he literally Googled least expensive beachfront house on the eastern coast of Long Island, he did. And so he came up with this house on Nepog Beach, which is a stretch of beach between Amagansett and Montauk. And it's kind of, if you've ever been out here, it's where the lobster roll is. He's almost right across the street from that. So he found this, and it was it's a hexagon shape, sorry, 6-sided, but it was in the dune. And so he lived in it. It was really kind of crumbling, and he lived in it like that with his wife's a surfer. She was very happy to commune with nature. She didn't want anything big or fussy. His older daughter and his younger daughter loved it. But one night he was having Will Meyer, the architect and designer, over for dinner. Someone you probably know well, who's so gifted.
That's issue too.
I know. That really was a coincidence.
I know.
And so we had him over for dinner, and he said, and David said, you know, Will, I'll bet you even you couldn't make this house pretty. And so David says he thinks Will took pity on him and said, you know, he said like Will's foot went through one of the boards or something, and he took pity on him. And they came up with this idea of kind of a tent. And so they had to keep the shape and they had to keep everything in place, because otherwise they would have to move it way back from the beach, because they wouldn't be able to keep it in the dune. So they left everything as is, but they just fluffed it up a little. And they, you know, it is a new roof, but it's the same shape, same footprint. And it's just magical. And of course, they came up with the idea of putting the master bedroom on the top floor and the bathrooms in the master bedroom. And the master bedroom has its own outdoor space. And it's really like a villa on the top floor. And it's also like a finger in the wind, because you can see the bay from the top floor and the ocean. And you see the weather coming and going. And it's pretty magical up there, a lot. I was going to say a lot happens up there in that bedroom, but I mean weather-wise. Sorry, David and Liz. Anyway, but yeah, so that's a magical house, and to see them come and go in that house with his daughters and living on the beach, and he's, you know, David. It's hard to imagine, but David has become a grill master. So, you know, he's
I've seen that on Instagram.
Did you see that? It's like, so, you know, he really can do anything. He really can. And, you know, another house I know you were interested in is it's still a little bit modern, but it's just so much different than, say, David Netto's or the Burden House is Hoover Hall.
Oh, wow. So spectacular. I mean, that's a statement.
Isn't it? And we, you know, we opened up with that, like with the showstopper, yeah. And it's also, it's a really interesting story too. And it's Tom Armstrong was the director of the Whitney Museum. And so he had this beautiful old historic house on Fisher's Island. And he had these beautiful gardens designed by Norman Wheelock. Mm-hmm. And the house burnt down.
And the museum director with the fire?
This is, yes. Can you believe it? It was, I know, actually, you don't want me to photograph your house because I dare say it might burn down. But no, but yeah, so it burnt down and the only thing left were the gardens. And I mean, these gardens are spectacular. So Tom Armstrong said, you know what? I want to build a modern house, completely the opposite of my big shingled house with the, you know, so many bedrooms and everything. He built, by now his children were grown. He wanted a 1-bedroom glass house on the shore where he could see his gardens on one side and the Sound on the other, the Long Island Sound, the Connecticut Sound. And so that's what he did. He turned to Tom Pfeiffer, who did, and Tom did Rice he did an addition at Rice University. He did the North Carolina Museum of Art. He's done many other things, but those are some of the public spaces he's done. And so Tom built him this beautiful glass house, and it's a dream. You know, it's only 1 bedroom. And of course his wife said, well, where will the children stay? And Tom said, you know, they're old enough now. It's about time they started renting their own houses.
Yeah. That's a statement.
It's a statement. It is a statement. And it's a little bit like a glass modern day pavilion. You really, the transition between indoors and outdoors is so seamless there. You kind of have to look around to see which side of the glass you're on, you know, and there's a beautiful overhang on every side of the house also. So when it rains, you can still have all the doors flung open. And then there's a water feature that goes when you walk into the entrance hall, immediately on the other side of the entrance hall is a water feature that connects the house to the Sound. So it almost feels like it's floating on the Sound.
And I feel like all the art and the furniture that's inside the house all fits within that mold too. It's all a perfect expression of the same vision.
It absolutely does. And Tom curated that, and they're absolutely beautiful.
And then you shift and you move us to other places that are completely different, like that Tom Shearer house in Nantucket, which is just so easy and natural, and for everything about Hoover Hall and how gorgeous it is, it's it's planned, it's rigorous. The Tom Shearer just sort of unfolds so beautifully and welcomingly.
It is, and when you're in it, of course, you think like, oh, they just kind of happened to cross this sofa here or that there or whatever. But you're right, it is very rigorous design. There's when you want to put a glass down, when you want to pick up a book, when you want to put your feet up, when everything is exactly as it should be. It is a perfectly appointed house that could not look more inviting or casual. I think if you closed your eyes and envisioned a summer house, you might think of that house, you know, of a classic summer house. And in fact, I got a text this morning from someone who sent me a picture of that bedroom with kind of the blowing curtain overlooking the lighthouse. And they said, "You won't believe this, Jennifer, but Russell's so happy because his mother rented this house in the 70s, and this was his bedroom." And so she was really happy to see it. But it's also, that house has good vibes because the family who lives there, they are so incredible. They what they did, their mother is now a widow, and she lives in the main house that most of the pictures are of. And they said, it's time to kind of zhuzh this up for mom. So they called Tom, who a lot of the daughters have worked on various projects with, and three daughters were in charge of it for their mother. And Tom said, "Okay, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to, if we need to buy anything new, it's for mom's main house." And they have 3 cottages on the property, and everything else in the main house gets triaged to the cottages and reworked. And so, Tom is, a lot of designers would kind of poo-poo that because there goes your commission on new things out the window. But, he really, he got into it, and he's very careful with other people's money. So I think that was really, they had a great experience, and the house reflects that. And when all of the kids come, you would think there's 3 daughters, there's 3 cottages. You would think one family would have 1 cottage, but they don't. It all depends on who's coming, who's going, who's got how many guests with them, who's doing this and that. And she said, we just figure it out. Nobody really has a claim to anything here. And I think that's pretty magical.
And you know what else is magical is Tom Shearer's ability to conjure these houses in seaside locations again and again that each feels so individual and so relaxing. How do you define that Tom Shearer magic? What do you think it is?
Oh my gosh. Well, I thought this wasn't a test, but here we go. No. Gosh, if someone could define, I wish I could bottle Tom Shearer's magic. Yeah. But I think Tom, I think he looks at the setting and at the homeowners, and I think that when a house is an authentic reflection of the homeowner and of the setting, it'll stand the test of time. And of the architecture that the house, what I think he looks at what the people, the setting, and the architecture bring to it. And he goes from there. And I think he's a great student, a great reader of people. And he knows how you want to live before you know it. And you did a great story, Jackie, on his house in the Abacos, which could not be more different, but it's a seaside house. And it has a little bit of Greek influence. Tom is also really well traveled, and he's seen everything. And he said, from the time he was a child, he was absorbing his surroundings, and especially interior design and architecture, because that has always been his passion. And I find that the best architects really and interior designers have really been taking all this stuff in since they were children, because they're so passionate about their jobs. So he has all these references in his head that, it's just he can tap into for any project he's working on.
It's so true. It's so true.
Yeah.
And
okay.
So for all of these houses that are beautiful, and you can imagine yourself in here and there and all of these, there's one that really stands out as being something totally different. Totally different. It's that lighthouse.
I know, isn't it crazy? So this lighthouse, I was in New York, out in New York City, and someone said, "Well, if you're doing a book on summer houses, have you seen Randy's lighthouse?" Like someone lives in a lighthouse, and I thought it was maybe like a windmill, like something on land that somehow got moved or whatever. And he said, "No, Randy Palumbo, who's an artist." Randy Palumbo, by the way, he's also a kind of bespoke contractor. He builds houses. He does projects like installations for Maya Lin. He does installations for Deborah Burke and Jacques Grange. He's really a contractor to, top of the line. But he's also an artist, and so he does things on a massive scale. He has a work in Tasmania Museum of that he's done an installation of a grotto there that is next to a James Turrell installation. You know, like he's the real deal. So when he was looking for on government government auction sites, I guess there's a government auction sites online for old fuselages, because he wanted to make a sculpture out of an old fuselage. He found this lighthouse and he couldn't resist buying it. And one of his best friends is the writer Rick Moody. And Rick Moody said, "You have to go for it. This is meant to be," as a good friend would, right? So he bought the lighthouse after 3 years, I think, of bidding on and off. He finally bought it, and he's turned it into an artwork. He's put a grotto inside it, but he's also put, I actually gave him the idea. He's like, "I don't know how people are going to sleep in there." And I said, "Don't overthink it. Get army cots or something, if you love government auction sites, you know." So he put army cots in there. Just throw it in. And then his dear, dear mother gave him, knitted him, you know, pillows and throws and blankets, and you'll see those in there. And that's one floor. Another floor has a beautiful desk, because he imagines that this will be a place where he'll allow artists to come and write music or write books, or he had said something like they could write dances and things. I'm not sure it's the place for that, but and then the third floor is actually the grotto, that he does these crazy grottos of, you know, of different colored glass. And it's really magical to be in there as the sun's setting. And it's very hard to get to because he has no dock. So you have to kind of like have this special captain who knows how to navigate the rocks, get you close enough to it. And then he has a pool ladder kind of jerry rigged onto the rocks, and you kind of get on that and climb your way up to the top. And that was our last shoot. And I would say it was like an incredible way to wrap up.
A big finale, right?
Yes, a big finale at the lighthouse.
Against the rocks.
Yeah. Yeah.
I absolutely love it. So quickly, do you have a favorite, or do you have one that you're like, I would move in, wouldn't change a thing?
I can honestly say, I know it sounds like a mother talking about her children, but I love all of them. And I think that's one of the ways I choose them, is you get inside and you say, okay, this is it. I'm starting over. I want to live like this. And I could live in any of them just as they are, because I think they are all in their element. And when you get in there, you get into it, and they're real escapes, you know. And I love the stories. I just love that the house becomes a portrait of the person.
Will you tell those stories so well? And Summer to Summer is an absolute must-have this summer. But also, you know, it's the perfect book to give to someone if you are visiting their summer house, or you want to bring something over, because it's such a fun read, and the visuals are just stunning. And to see these different houses and all the different expressions about how you can live along the water on the East Coast is refreshing and beautiful and uplifting right now. So Jennifer, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for writing this gorgeous book. And we're so thrilled to have the house in Maine in the summer issue of Galerie. So please find a copy, pick it up. It's absolutely amazing. But also you can see this story on galeriemagazine.com, and follow us on Instagram, and like us on Facebook. So thank you, Jennifer, for joining us. Thank you, everyone, for listening and watching all of these beautiful houses unfold in Summer to Summer. Thank you.
Thank you for having me, Jackie.